On June 26, 2006, I was a broken and isolated man who no longer wanted to live, who just couldn't imagine living anymore. When I look back at that day, I see myself in jagged fragments, pieces of me scattered around the floor. I knew my addiction was bigger than me, and I knew there had to be something in this universe bigger than it.
Do you mind talking a little bit about how this running relates to your sobriety and how maybe you came to that point or how they intersected?
Running is a big piece of my recovery. It's not something I depend on for my recovery. When I say recovery, I mean recovery from alcohol and drug abuse, or addiction rather. Running can't be the answer to my recovery because I'm gonna get injured, I'm gonna get hurt. The running might not always be there, but it is good therapy. And I find that at these races of ultra long distances, there are many people like me there. So I have many friends in recovery, I have many friends in long running.
So if you're running 100 miles, I'm imagining there's a lot of misery involved with some of that.
There is. It's a different kind of misery. You really need to consider the difference between discomfort and pain if you want to get through it, I think. Because discomfort is something that's very acceptable and temporary. And so I think usually the miserable moments have come about because of weather. And I had been running it at the Zumbro 100 for about 24 hours, and it was maybe 35 degrees and this horrible wind, rain onslaught came out of the sky with hail and lightning, and I ended up dropping from that race. What do they call it when you have you can't stop shaking?
Hypothermia?
Hypothermia, thank you, is the word. I was pretty blue and my arms were just shaking, and I kind of associate real miserable times with the weather, heat, extreme heat maybe, or that kind of cold, or elevation in the Bighorn Mountains. When I got too high of an elevation, I just kept throwing up and couldn't stop. It's funny because you usually don't get good ideas when you're running 100-mile races. But when I was running the race in 2014, and I was just, as you're running, you talk to people, of course, other people running it, and I'm talking to a guy who, the week before, he was working with natives in the Amazon, or somebody else who's running it because of a dead friend or whatever, and I just thought everybody's got these, everybody running this thing is a novel unto itself. And I thought I need, and I like to document things. That's just something I like to do. I like to photograph, I like to write things down. And so I said, I need to tell some of these stories. I spent the next 2 years just basically talking to people and getting to know people. I chose 8 runners. And some people, when I asked, said, no, I don't want you writing about me. Understandably so. Because to me, you're really opening yourself up. You're making yourself very vulnerable because you don't know what I'm gonna say about you. You really don't. So it's a very you have to feel somewhat naked to say, sure, go ahead and write my story, because the story writer never gets the story exactly right according to the person whose story it is. Never. But I did my best, and to give them the respect they deserved. There's a great feeling of accomplishment, like, wow, I made it, of course, but usually that piece of it takes a few days to really process and sink through too. And that's why I love these things, because you don't know if you're going to make it. You know, it's so different from the neighborhood 5K where everybody at the starting line is most likely going to finish. I'm not knocking that neighborhood 5K either. But it's just a completely different thing at the start of 100 where a third of the people may make it to the finish line. And you don't know if you're going to be one of those people and what you're going to encounter that day, either externally or internally, that you might be hopefully able to move through to get to the finish.